seen and presentations done by Emer and Spence in an excellent way, and I introduced already the 4 breakout sessions and the rapporteur teams or rapporteurs of the 4 breakout sessions. And I think these are important topics we have to discuss. So you can now work in your breakout sessions, and please enter the room as now you have been agreed to, and then we will come back with the reports of the rapporteurs then after these breakout sessions, and have then time to wrap up from the 4 breakout groups, and then 30 minutes for deeper discussion or questions which might be raised. So thank you very much. So, and a lot of success in your breakouts.
Yes.
I'm just testing my camera. It seems that it's not working. Just a sec.
Elizabeth, we can see you. We could see you.
Cesar, I think you can start if you want.
Okay, thank you. We are only 5 participants. Is that right, or should we wait for more participants? Maybe I cannot see all the participants.
I will check with the team. Okay, just a minute.
Okay.
I think it's only the speakers that are you can see in the bottom. So I actually think they're external viewers as well, but that's just my perception of this. But I can be wrong.
I think Marta that was speaking. I don't know if you can hear her.
Cesar?
Yes.
It's Marta. Yes, hello. So good afternoon to you all. Apologies, we were just checking. So the other participants are attending in a different virtual room. So I think we can proceed. I will liaise with them. That's my function, okay? So thank you so much. And you have the floor. Thank you.
So we can start, right?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Marta. So it's going to be very familiar discussion. Only I see Tina and you, Thomas. I don't know who else.
Hi, I'm sorry, I'm not turning on the camera because it makes noise.
So we can start. As Marta suggests. Okay, looks this issue has not raise a lot of emotion and interest.
Cesar, just a clarification. So we have other attendees. So this is the panel that you need to liaise, but we have different people in a different room, let's say. And I will liaise between the two virtual rooms. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Marta. So we can start. What we are going to do first of all, apologies for this misunderstanding. I cannot attend yesterday the preparation session because of other obligations. So maybe it is my fault, not the fault of the organization. So we are going to speak about repurposing. I will speak only 2-3 minutes just to set up the scene. I think that. Repurposing is going to be important because we have a problem on how to repurpose all the very old products. So we are not focusing on the issues that usually the industry does, that is to find the new indications for the products, but how to make this process with the very old products out of the protection and patent periods, and that are the industry do not have the incentives that are enough to have developed. Even when they have the incentives, this looks very disproportionate for the system, and in the end, sometimes, not always, but sometimes these huge incentives play against the access that is the main theme of this conference. So we are going to focus on how to make how to make this possible, how to recognize the indication for very old products. Sometimes this may happen from the scratch. But other times, what actually happens is that off-label use, for example, of a product during the entire life cycle provides enough information data to make it possible that we can convert on-label what is usually off-label. This is not easy, and in STAM, the Safe and Timely Access group of the Pharmaceutical Committee, we have been working in preparing a pilot to test whether the existing regulatory tools, mainly scientific advice and approval through variations, new marketing authorization application, and so on, can serve the purpose of some non-for-profit organizations, term like champions, to make this task, to gather all the information and to present to the regulator so that we can recognize the indication, the new indication in these old products. The pilot was about to start in February 2020, and probably you already know that we had a pandemic at that time, so it was stopped. But in the meantime, we have learned a lot about how to repurpose. In fact, dexamethasone is one of these old products that has been repurposed with the pandemic. Some others, unfortunately, do not succeed in this run. But now, hopefully, with the vaccines, we are seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and we can be ready to restart this pilot and to discuss about repurposing and how we can use this tool within the European pharmaceutical strategy to promote both the access to the old products, which in the end are already there, but we need to ensure that are going to stay there for a while, and also as we preserve this option for the old products, we also gain some space to incorporate the new indications of the new products. So very glad to hear your opinions and your views and to share your thoughts in order to make this possible, because I think that is really important. I think that as I don't know if we are, I will be able to see. I think so. I saw more people now in the participants. So you can ask for the floor. Please identify yourself and feel free to start the discussion. Any of you that want to start. I see very well-known people, at least from my side. If this is not the case, that we have volunteers for this, I will send you a question so any of you can answer the question. Do you think that this is possible, or what should be done in order to make it possible that we have a regulatory pathway to find a way to recognize some of them already well-known indication for all products that, as I mentioned, mostly are out of the protection periods, out of the patent periods, and in the end do not have incentives to be taken to the normal activities of the pharmaceutical companies. Who wants to have the floor? Who wants to start the discussion on this issue? Okay. Tina, go ahead, please. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Tina Ingraf, DG Santé, and I'm not an expert on repurposing, and I'm not sure I have any, I don't have the golden bullet, but I do see the problems. And one of the things that is difficult in repurposing is that even if we, through the pharmaceutical legislation, find a pathway that will invite more repurposing, I think some of the challenges are outside of the pharma regulatory system, because we see that we have substitution, for instance, in many member states, and that, I'm not going to say undermines the repurposing efforts in the medicines regulatory system, but there are forces outside that make it less attractive for companies, even if they can get, I don't know if it's going to be regulatory protection or incentives to develop repurposing, but afterwards, once it's marketed, once we go into the actual use in the member states, we see barriers that hinder it. And I do find it very, very difficult to see how that can be changed, because this is national competence. It may also be off-label use that will put this into or make it more difficult. So as I said, I don't have any good solutions. I see some problems, and I do find it difficult to see the solutions to those problems because they're outside of the normal pharma framework. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Of course, you know that there are some problems and there are some elephants in the room. One is all those things that are downstream the pharmaceutical policies, and mainly related with also pharmaceutical but national pharmaceutical policies like price and reimbursement and substitution policies and so on and so forth. But for example, for taking into account the ideas of a stamp, as I mentioned, the idea is to find a way to make this possible and attractive for the companies, but mainly driven by the academia or other non-for-profit organizations that can gather all the data that are outside. In fact, some of the products that have been approved for this repurposed indication obtain the data from this kind of off-label use or regular off-label use, and in some indications. So, or for dexamethasone, for example, there was an opinion on Article 5.3 of the EMA that can be used by the companies to ask for through a variation or through a line extension or whatever to obtain this marketing authorization, this new indication for the marketing authorization. Anybody else that wants to discuss? For sure, it is not easy, but we are not going to take the things that are easier, but those that are difficult. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Cesar. I just wanted to. I'm not really very good at this area. I normally work with medical devices, so I'm not I'm not an expert here. But just to follow up on Tina's comments before, I think if this is very much a national competence, if it were to be, I think the challenges we have seen on medical device side lately with testing is that there is a very large spillover effect. If something happens in one country, then it takes 2 weeks. Then it's a question in the next country and so forth. So it is to a large extent still the same common market. Even so, and what happens if self-testing is allowed in Germany, it takes approximately 2 weeks before I have a political question. Why isn't it allowed in Denmark? So I think these things have a tendency to flow cross borders. So I don't know how to address this, but I think just to open the problem up. Thanks.
But to speed up the exchange of, do you think that this issue repurposing should be left only for companies? So only are the companies who have the possibility to do that, or do you think that this idea of having a learned society, an HTA, gathering the data, that is enough to recognize that, for example, the use of colchicine is the treatment of choice of pericarditis, for example, everywhere is in the guidelines of all the cardiology societies and so on. Do you think that this pathway can be done without the industry, or should be in any case the industry who is in the lead of this kind of repurpose projects?
So is Sarah Garner here? Can I come in?
Go. Okay.
Yeah. Hey, I'm Sarah Garner. I'm the acting program manager for the Access to Medicines and Health Products at WHO Euro, and I was formerly at NICE, the UK's HTA agency. So from my perspective, if it remains off-label, it does become an issue for pricing and reimbursement for countries that have reimbursement, because it's most of the HTA agencies, payers rely on licenses. They're very strict about using things within the indication specified in the marketing authorization. So from my perspective, one of the issues is about who holds that marketing authorization, because if it's a private company, there have to be incentives, and the incentives are invariably a lot higher than for a generic medicine, because these were generic. So in terms of that, the incentives have already been had for the original patent period, and they would be looking to have more than the costs of obtaining marketing authorization. I don't think the academics have the experience of applying for marketing authorization. It's not the responsibility of the HTA agencies. A few of them are collecting data, but it's usually in the context of managed entry agreements for high-cost medicines. So this really falls between everybody's responsibilities, and I think that's one of the overarching issues that need addressing. And I'll hand back and say thank you.
Thank you,
Cesar.
Yes.
Cesar. So just to inform you that in the chat, I have included some of the questions that our audience is sending to us. So first comment was regarding that old medicines are less competitive for companies' price. So the interest in exploring new approaches is not great, and investing in new therapeutic indications may not be economically viable. A second comment / question. So in case the holder has no interest in repurposing despite proper data from the champion, could EMA still come up with scientific advice as they did for dexamethasone? The remits of EMA has unfortunately only been expanded for pandemics and not for life-threatening diseases. Also, a third comment, so create an investment line for this research. So these are the comments that we are having. So if you could see the chat, Cesar.
I cannot see the chat, Marta. I don't know. First of all, can you see?
We are seeing your presentation. Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe.
Well, this is if you can see it. This is the schema for the proposal of the regulatory pathway for repurposing for the champions. I just to inform that in the end it's not a company that would seek the regulatory guidance and to gather the data and to present it to the scientific advice, and then provided it is complete enough, would interact with the marketing authorization holders that have those medicines that can be either the innovators or generics or hybrids or whatever, and then to find the license route to obtain the new indication, the variation, line extension, and marketing authorization. As Ara has mentioned, to have off-label products in the market, I mean, can solve some problems, but then there may be rules, national rules, that impede the access for those products at the national level, but also rules for price and reimbursement that prevents this off-label indications to be reimbursed. And what is more worrisome for me is that in the end, these products may disappear from the market and re-enter as a new product, while and the example of the chenodeoxycholic acid is quite good, and I think that we all of us have suffered this example. I don't know if anyone can hear Marta when she speaks. It's only me that have this voice in my mind. Can you, Marta?
Cesar, can you repeat? I did not follow you. Sorry, can you repeat your question? Sorry.
No, my question is, anybody can hear you in the room, or it's just me who can hear you?
Maybe just you, so apology.
No, I think we can all hear Martha.
No, Martha, sorry.
I am sorry.
If you can hear me to speak alone, is because Martha is telling me some questions that we have in the chat. Main question is, what would be for this repurposing? And I think it's quite important and challenging. If any of you, especially if we have industry or patients representatives, may elaborate a little bit on this. Do you think that for these all products that we need to maintain in the market because they have value indication, what would be the incentives, or how can we shape these incentives for these products in order to maintain them in the market?
Sarah, shall I have a go?
Sarah, go ahead.
Sarah, shall I have a go again? Everybody's being very quiet for you this afternoon. I think that the question is around sufficient incentives, and we get back to, WHO's been having a discussion about fair pricing, because we've seen a number of examples where medicines have been bought, repurposed, and the price has gone very, very high, far beyond what the registration costs or the data collection costs would be. And I think that I certainly, in a UK setting, I used to have academics approach me saying that they've done a study, they've got funding for a trial, but what do they do next? How would they go about using that data for authorization, because they didn't want to hold the authorization? So who has that? And I think for the healthcare systems, that's one of the issues. And I think it's also for non-regulators, it's quite a complicated prospect about what the roles and responsibilities are once you have a marketing authorization, so pharmacovigilance, etc. requirements, and that seems to be quite a daunting prospect. Academics can do the front bit for the data, but then someone actually needs to take it forward, and we don't want it to be done for high profit. So there needs to be a not-for-profit basis somehow, and I'll hand back.
Thank you, Sarah. Good point.
If I may come, please.
Tina, do go ahead.
Yeah,
if you want.
Just I didn't. I hope I wasn't misunderstood. I'm not saying that we shouldn't see if we can find a good pathway or if we can find incentives. And I think, of course, that the interaction and the contribution from academia is very important, because it is probably one of the things that will help companies get interested if there is, I was about to say, less work for them to go for these new indications, especially if they have problems downstream. We can't solve the downstream problems. It shouldn't, of course, mean that we wouldn't look into what we can do in the pharma legislation to incentivize this. And I agree with Sarah that the incentives will have to be proportionate to the effort. We don't want overcompensation either. So it is a difficult balance to strike. And also, if we want the incentives to balance with the effort, then is the incentive then smaller if the eventual marketing authorization holder has been served the documentation on a platter? I don't know. It's a question. But it is this balance that is difficult to strike. But certainly some advice to academia so that they get a better understanding of what is required to collect the right evidence to support a new indication is very important. Thank you.
Cesar, can I jump in with 2 comments from the audience?
Okay.
Okay, so indeed, we believe that barriers to off-patent repurposing are multifactorial. The solution we propose for innovation on off-patent medicines is linking approval procedures, innovation frameworks, and reimbursement processes to create an ecosystem. So it's the first comment. And the second one was we could have incentives for research and development, manufacturing, and of course the prices of the final product needs to be increased, as they have been mandatorily driving down the prices to a level of unsustainability. Also, more IP protection should be given to companies, especially small, medium enterprises. And the third one is that NHS England recently published a report on repurposing, stating new incentives are needed for generic manufacturers. What do you see as a possible incentive? So mainly on incentives here.
Okay, looks like incentives is the magic word in this. But to be honest, I mean, I think that for sure we can find how to incentivize the industry to do this or to do that. I mean, it is important to, and we need to think about it. But what we are talking about is what happened in those cases where the incentives are not, so high that, and we don't want to be so high, them to be so high that it is, as has been mentioned, overcompensated. And what can be done so that with a given indication that in the end, we, with a very few work, can ensure that it's good enough to be recognized regulatorily, but and that we want to be part of the products that are already in the market, and for sure we want to find the fair incentives, the fair price, but we don't want and we want the companies to use it. I mean, dexamethasone is an example. I can tell you that we are with the help of Medicines for Europe and FPA are trying to get insight on how the companies at the national level has moved with this new indication of the dexamethasone, how easy or how difficult has been for them to obtain this new indication based on the analysis of the EMA. Okay, more comments. There was who else? Who wants to intervene? Larry, I see you. Do you want to comment as one of the co-chairs of the EU Innovation Network, do you think that the EU Innovation Network can play a role in this issue of the repurposing?
Sorry, sorry, I've literally just joined because I've had meetings throughout the day, and I'm actually not going to be able to stay for long. But
sorry.
Obviously, I want to support you in the work, and it's obviously very important work. But I've just joined, so not really in a position to comment.
No, well,
we have an additional. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Marta. Go ahead.
Yeah, we have an additional point, and it regards we already have a legislation related to well-established use, and why not use it? So maybe if you can comment on this, maybe We have seen some situations, but we in the EU we have been seeing that the repurposing is quite useful for orphan, for instance, rare diseases. Now we have COVID. Now, dexamethasone, I think it's a really successful, but we also have other situations where we have seen that it was not so successful, let's say. But at least we reached some conclusions, so it is good. So can you comment also on this? Thank you.
Well, a good question. Can we use the well-established use legislation to obtain this kind of indications? I think that the problem is not to. I mean, once we have the data that is enough to recognize a new indication, it is not a problem to recognize it through a I mean, whatever the regulatory route that you want to use. The problem is who, in the end, is going to benefit of this new indication. For sure, if it's one company, it will be easier. Where there is an incentive to do it, the companies will do the work. This is what usually happens. And in the end, this incentive may be this, proportionate to the amount of investigation that they have done, or disproportionate. We are not going to discuss this. The problem is if we imagine if we select one of the dexamethasones that we have in the market to have the new indication and no other can benefit on that, how we are going to maintain this, to be honest, this differential indication on one dexamethasone and not the other, while we probably can recognize that all the dexamethasones at the same dose for sure and with the same route of administration and so on and so forth can benefit of this idea. I mean, the difficulty is not to do what is already in the legislation. So if we can try to make workable a new pathway, so all the companies, without any more investment, so without the need to change a little bit, only more than a little bit, the prices, can benefit of this indication, and again make all on label what is off label. I mean, with the current legislation for pharmacovigilance, for example, it doesn't matter that the use of the medicine is on label or off label. The companies are obliged to perform their regular pharmacovigilance activity. So, in the end, if we, as a system, recognize that, for example, after an academic study in the, in France or in Germany, Italy, Spain, Lithuania, wherever, we have enough data to recognize an indication. Why not to, I mean, establish that this indication can be in all the medicines that are already in the market with that active substance at a given dose and a given formulation or whatever. Because what is usually happening, that is that the company takes the indication and develops the indication. This is business as usual, and we don't. I mean, we can discuss on the incentives, whether they are proportionate or not, whether this is going to happen or not. But when we have 10, maybe hundreds of medicines with the same active substance in Europe, how we can say that only one has the indication of, I don't know, familiar Mediterranean fever, in the case of colchicine, only for one. This is what we need. And again, what is the compensation that these companies may have in order to have, for example, in this case, an indication that is for a rare disease, but that has not been developed by the company, but by the academia or by the other institution that are not for profit. I think that if we want to play in favor of the access, we need to find this pathway. The other pathway we need to refine, but this is a new pathway. How to the companies and everyone and the patients in the end may benefit for the huge amount of work that is done at the academia with this kind of data. And we had an important point in one of the questions that what if a company, imagine that none of the companies in Europe wanted to have the COVID-19 indication for the dexamethasone. What can be done in that case? Can be recognized as an opinion, scientific opinion of the EMA? Or can we make a collective opinion that, for example, it doesn't matter if any company wants to have the indication in the label, can we recognize an indication that is completely orphan of a company? That was a good question. Some countries, I think Sweden, we in Spain, have this possibility to make a kind of recommendation of use. But again, we can think that the medicines can be used off-label, and that provided it is recommended in a national guideline, for example, it wouldn't be needed that it is recognized also in the label of the medicines. Okay, more comments. I'm very sorry because I think that. Okay, Marta.
Yes, so we have two additional comments. So one regards regulatory flexibility and different ways of assessing efficacy with big data and observational studies needs also to be recognized by the authorities. So we have seen in Emmer's presentation and on the strategy that we are also looking a bit on this on the possibility of using big data. So how do you see that that can also help in repurposing and to use this approach for old molecules?
Well, two good questions. The first one is how flexible should be the regulators on this? And my position is that and the pilot on repurposing in Europe would be designed to test these flexibilities. I think that in the end, among all of us, the champions, the academia, the non-for-profit organization, the companies, but also the regulators should be flexible enough to make this possible. Not to lower the barriers, not to have different rules that we have for the products, but recognizing that in the end, if something is regularly used in Europe, for example, I mean, maybe we don't have to start from the scratch the development of this medicine just to cover all the gaps that we have in knowledge. But and then we have also the discussion on the, for example, can be incentives for the companies to have fee exemption, for example, in the end. Although I think that the fee exemption, well, it's an incentive, but not so high that is the most important. I mean, in the end, what is important is the position of the product in the market and probably the multiplication of the price with the volume and so on. And the second question is also very interesting. Is I mean, are we going to use different data sets to evaluate this? I mean, could be observational data or registry data, or you know, not only clinical trials. What we can use for this, I think that definitely yes, but this should be tested again. I mean, it depends on how big is the gap that you need to cover. I mean, if only with observational data or registry data or real world data, you can have you can convince everybody, not only the regulators, but everybody that is enough to recognize the indication. I think there should be no problem to do it. However, we need to recognize that this is more difficult, and from now on, for the time being, sorry, the gold standard of this is the randomized clinical trial. So we need to find the right balance. Again, all these two different possibilities, or combine the two different possibilities. And as long as the product has a long track record on off-label use, I think that more and more easy would be to use this observational data. Do anybody want to intervene on this?
It's Sarah again.
Okay, Sarah.
I could have a comment. Just from an HTA perspective, the use of the observational data is controversial even for high unmet need, for drugs that meet the criteria for the public health need or conditional licenses. So I think it would be, at the moment, given many places still have concerns about the biases in other data sets, I think it will be quite hard to make the case as to why trial RCT evidence wasn't available. But as you say, I think it just depends on which drug it is, what it's for, what the repurposing is for, and where the uncertainties are. And I'll hand back. Thank you.
No, thank you, Sarah. I agree with you. I mean, what I was trying to say is, it is impossible. No, it is not impossible. In fact, what is difficult to understand is why we have, for example, such a large amount of observational data coming from off-label use, and we cannot say not, because off-label use is not forbidden. But we cannot use the data that we have to organize a little bit our knowledge on that. At least to say what is the gap that we need to fulfill to provide a full recommendation. I mean, not only regulatory approval, but also HTA advice to position the medicine among the others alternative that we have. So my personal view on this is that it will be, I mean, although I share with you your points, but it will be very difficult not to be open to consider that there may be other data sources that can complement what we have on clinical trials. I would like to mention, for example, probably what may happen in the future with medicines is that we can combine the clinical trials with some other, I would say, experiments or data sources that can complement the clinical trial. So in a very short term, we can have a good opinion on the real value of the product. So we do not stop in the beginning, but we make it possible to generate data in a very short term, so we can position the medicine. I mean, not immediately after the approval, but not 10, 15 years after the approval. That is what would usually happen when a new product enters into the market after the loss of the protection period. But generally, I agree with you. No, we need to be very careful.
Yeah. So, okay, just I think we're in agreement, and I think there is definitely an openness to considering other types of data, but I guess that it's about what is the question we're trying to answer, and what is the most appropriate study design, and what are the risks of what are the risks if we get it wrong, and how about the data be biased? What's the comparator cohort? So I think it's probably a case by case. and certainly if you're talking about an HTA paradigm, many of the agencies are the similar resourcing issues. So if it's a lower cost medicine, it's unlikely that it will actually get onto the portfolio of the HTA agency. So it will become an issue for the payer as well in some countries. So it's complex. Yeah.
But
so
I
maybe. Yes. Yes, Cesar, do you want to finish?
Yes.
I was just going to send out the last question, and then I think we should stop. But thank you. Continue, and then I will ask the last question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We are getting the end of this session. Does anybody else want to intervene on this? I think one of the key questions, Sarah, however, should be that, this pathway, this potential pathway, will not work if in the end we have to pay for these new indications the same price that you are paying for the new indications that are regularly entering the system. The success, or at least one of the success of this, for sure, would be to offer new alternatives for patients that probably with unmet medical needs to some extent, but that in the end, nobody, no the companies, no the academia, no the patients have to invest a lot in doing that. So in the end, maybe, just small adjustment of the price or something like that can be done, because it's like putting at the disposal of each and every company the new indication that can be recognized. It's not about making any investment on that. We have to test it, but in this case, and I link this to the amount of data, because I agree with you that it depends on the answer that you need to respond. But in this case, the money should not be the problem, as usually is with the new indications of the new products that enter for the first time in the market. This is about recognizing that you can use an anti-inflammatory like dexamethasone in situations where you have inflammation. Maybe it's not the best example because it doesn't change too much, but I always use the same example. Imagine if we could make this with ketoconazole for the Cushing syndrome, or we could make this with the quino deoxycholic acid that we have in our markets 10 to 15 years ago, and then disappear and then reappear.
Yeah. Cesar, so okay. Just your final remarks. We will be closing in 1 minute.
Okay, thank you very much, Marta. I think we are going to close if no one has any urgent thing to say. First of all, apologies because I thought that I would have the possibility to interplay more with everyone. In the end, looks like this has been a monologue from my side. Sorry for that. I really apologize for that because I thought that probably many of you have more interesting things to say than me. I will try to summarize what we have discussed with the questions that came from the chat and so on. And thank you, and stay tuned, because I think that I hope that in the second part of this year, we will be able to launch the pilot project of the repurposing at the EU level, and we will have at least some parameters to test whether this route can be workable or not. Well, thank you very much. Take care during the last month of the pandemic, hopefully, and we will see again in the main room. Goodbye.
Thank you, Cesar. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. It was very fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Cesar. Great job.
So please give me a sign from the technicians when all participants are back in the main room. So thank you very much. I heard from the technicians that everybody is back in the main room, so we will go forward with the results of the breakout sessions, and we will start with breakout session 1. And I would ask Helena and Violeta to wrap up what you have discussed and what are the key outcomes of your session. So please go ahead. Helena or Violeta, are you able to unmute? And
now I can.
okay, great.
Now I'm unmuted.
Hi, Violeta.
Hello, Carol.
So please go ahead with your wrap up.
So, as you know, the topic of our session was how can we improve access to medicines in special populations, and what changes in the two regulations could potentially lead to an improvement in access. And we had very short presentations of the 4 different scenarios which are discussed and which are now being tested, both for the pediatric and for the orphan regulation. And there are some differences. What are the elements which are in these scenarios? And then the question to the audience was, what suggestions do you have in mind which can help in this perspective? Now, one of the problems, especially for the pediatric regulation, is that our colleagues at the pediatric committee very often have to give a waiver for a certain medicine which is developed in adults, and the waiver is given because the condition does not exist in children. But on the other hand, the mechanism of action of this drug is such that it can be used and applicable for other diseases in children. And the question is, how can something be changed in the regulation to, let's say, push a little bit in the direction of development of that drug in other conditions? It is an advice as it is now, and this is always mentioned in the minutes of PDCO, but there is a wish to incentivize this in a different way, which will lead in the end to drug development in some neglected areas. So this is one question to the audience, and there were some different suggestions coming. One would be what I read in the chat. I have to look at my notes now, is that there could be some additional incentives, or that there could be suppression of Article 11b, if I noted it correctly. But also that a suggestion which came, and which is maybe valid also for the rare conditions, not only for the pediatric, was that there might be some prioritization and tolerance to which is inherent with the clinical uncertainty which we have with ultra rare conditions and with very few children having a certain disease. In other words, that there could be a different way to incentivize this. Now, another discussion which we had, and which was again a question to the audience, more related to the orphan regulation, that was whether there are mechanisms which we could think of related to differential incentivization of drug development according to the level of the unmet medical need, and also to the performance during drug development, but also post-marketing of the certain medicinal product. What is meant here is that there could be ideas how to provide additional rewards and incentives if a medicinal product is not only developed and brought to the market, but is also in the end made available and accessible in more or all countries of the European Union, which is a problem very well recognized nowadays. So whether there could be some mechanisms how to correlate the extent of market exclusivity or any other incentives which are now under discussion, some new, probably different incentives, to the efforts which have been made and to the final result, which is the availability and access to medicines. Then I also saw something in the chat, which I'm not sure whether it was in reference to our session, but I think it was, and it is related to the fact that maybe HTAs are having a very complex assessment nowadays, could be a little bit simplified when it is about some neglected patient populations. And then for the ultra rare conditions, there was a comment that maybe there could be some additional schemes like similar to the PRIME, which can help and accelerate development. So maybe all this has been mentioned in many other conferences and meetings, but it was another opportunity to discuss some of these elements today. And I must say that if we had more time, I believe we would have had many more and interesting ideas, but unfortunately, we had a very limited amount of time. So this is a very small summary of what we discussed in session 1. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Violeta. I think I couldn't agree more that under the bottom line, so there are many ideas in the different breakout sessions, and I think for every panel it might be a starting point to follow up on these discussions. So in the interest of time, I see that we have only 15 minutes left. I would move on to breakout session 2, and I would ask Elizabeth to share then the results of the group, and with particular with your experience.
Thank you very much, Carol. So just to wrap up what we discussed, the breakout session 2 was around the unmet medical needs and medicines and medical devices research in view of patients and health system needs. So in this discussion, we were very much focusing on the definition of what we are meaning by the unmet medical needs. We see that there is this concept, this notion has been repeated, that has been set as an objective in many strategies, different strategies to address the unmet medical needs, but there is a lack of really definition and understanding of the concept. So as a first step moving forward, it would be good to have a more concrete definition on what we mean by this, and what in different strategies maybe it would be a different definition. So to be able to understand better what we mean would be helpful. We also need to keep pushing for meaningful patient engagement in the definition of those priorities and those needs, as the key is really to be able to, at the end of the day, meet the needs of the patients and provide address the needs that are identified and the priorities that are identified. And this could be done through a multi-stakeholder forum or public-private partnership. there was some suggestion here to look at the existing coalitions that exist and see if through those forums there would be a possibility to define better this concept. The different strategy that were mentioned were the IHI, HTA, the WHO, and the European, the Commission's definition. So it's really to bring all this together and see and understand if the definition is the same, so that we can also see how to implement that and how to address those. In terms of the multi-stakeholder forum, so it's also a better way to address better access to health innovation by developing concrete solution in a multi-stakeholder forum that would also help introduce new technologies into the healthcare systems. It was also mentioned that creating safeguards, like incentives, and also having a better governance models would allow equal partnership in the discussion and to define the strategies and to move forward. And that could be done both at European and national level. And there was a last question at the end that really was a strong question, asking if the concept of the unmet medical needs has helped to drive innovation, or on the contrary, has been used to justify lower evidence standards for the decision making. I believe that the concept of unmet medical needs is really important. It will help to make focused decisions and to make decisions that are and to drive innovation that would be meaningful and address concretely the needs to improve the quality of life of the patients. So this is what we need, but there is still ways to go, steps to move forward together to improve that understanding of what we are meaning.
Yeah, thanks Elizabeth for this concise review of your discussions, and I think it's exactly hit to the point that the definition is key and the governance in which circumstances we are moving. So César, repurposing of old medicines, this has been your group's topic. Please refer back to us.
Okay, sorry, I was mute and I couldn't do it. Thank you, Carl. I will be very brief. I think that in the discussion, it was very clear that definitely repurposing is an issue, and it's an issue that has at least two different angles to be seen. One is the things that usually do the pharmaceutical industry with the products that are still on patent or during the protection period, but that we have a niche of products that are all products out of patent, out of protection periods, that can be seen as true orphans, as they are regularly used sometimes to treat a specific disease and patients, and sometimes because they may prove utility for a given disease, but that the industry do not have the incentives to develop. So there was a kind of consensus that we need to work on this segment of products that are all out of protection periods and that are not under a system of incentives that make that others, that the academia or the HTA or not-for-profit organizations can work on them. But in the end, and this is for for these products specifically, we need to see how these products end in the marketing of authorization holders, because I think that everyone's agreed that the academia and the not-for-profit organizations are not willing to convert themselves in marketing authorization holders. So in the end, we need to find this regulatory route to make it possible, to make possible that we change, provided we have enough data to grant the new indication, but that we find the way to do it within the regulatory system. Also, there was consensus, or at least some interventions in the same direction, that saying that not only can be done in the regulatory system, that we can find this regulatory route, that we can speed up the process, that even we can find incentives like fee exemption for these products, but that in the end that there are other things in the pharmaceutical system, substitution policies, price and reimbursement policies, that in the end may have also a role in making it possible and making it affordable and workable. We have learned during this COVID-19 pandemic, and dexamethasone has been mentioned several times. And a couple of final comments. We need to find the flexibilities on the system that allow us to find the way to the repurposing without lowering the bars. So we want to maintain the same guarantees that we usually give to the patients and the healthcare professional, but without making it impossible. And also, and somehow related, we have been discussing, and probably this will be commented also by Nikolai and the other colleagues, that how this non-usual data sets coming from registries, real-world data, observational studies, and so on, can make a big contribution to this repurposing pathway. Or on the other hand, it will be very difficult to use this data because they will not reach the regulatory acceptances that we need to give the guarantees that we usually need. But overall, I think that a very interesting issue that is going to play at least a role in the upcoming pharmaceutical strategy in Europe. Thank you, Carl, and thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you, Cesar, for this fine summary, particularly including the experience in the COVID-19 situation as well, regarding the corticosteroids or ibuprofen versus paracetamol and so on. So coming to the last breakout session, now it's Xavier and Nikolai on the use of big data and a European health data space. How could it be? So please, Xavier.
Yeah, I can probably, yes, I can start, and then Nikolai can complete. We addressed the question of availability and accessibility of the data from recommendations from the Joint Task Force on Big Data, and which provide as a first recommendation to ensure a secure and ethical data sharing culture. And it also promote the data discoverability. So we discussed a number of topics around these themes. And the first one that was probably the most discussed was to whom and by whom should data be shared. We shared a number of experience from regulators and from also academia, but the experience from BfArM was mentioned that there will be a research data center to be established where the data will be made available to academia, public institutions, and but not to pharmaceutical companies or the public in large. So although we recognize that ideally the data should be made publicly available. Then this is difficult in practice, and the data may need to be shared at least between regulators, but also then with researchers. The question was also by whom should the data be made available, and we discussed the data that are being available with regulators, but also with companies. And what we said that it would be better to have a two-way streams of data sharing, that although regulators could share data with companies and with others, but the industry is also sitting on a very large amount of data that are extremely valuable for the evaluation of benefits of and risk of medicines. But there are some obstacles for sharing this data from companies. But also we mentioned that at the level of academic institutions, there is also some culture of competition that may prevent sharing data or sharing data from research. We discussed also, because there was a question about what would be the action necessary at the EU level to promote the sharing of data across EU borders. And actually we came a bit to the conclusion that this is a question that may not be really appropriate anymore, because actually, there is now in the US, but also in Europe, the system of federated network of database that is being developed and increasingly used, which says that it is possible now with technological advances to have access to the data remotely, to make remote queries on databases, and to then export the results of this query. So there is no need to move the data anymore in order to get access to information that is provided. We discussed also the difficulty to have data, especially data from healthcare, routine healthcare, to have this data in real time. And in some countries, it may take months or even a year before the data that are collected in the electronic healthcare system can be made available for research or for regulators. So this is a difficulty that is certainly an important challenge in the future. We started a discussion, but we did not finish. We did not have the time to finish on data stewardship. So this is this system, this procedure that's being now promoted to ensure adequate and relevant expertise for data sharing, data ethics, and data protection within studies, and in order allowing them to follow the FAIR principles. So this is certainly an interesting ideas, and that we will need to follow, and that could provide them confidence and trust into the data that are being generated by industry or by regulators or by researchers. So I don't know, Nicola, if you would like to comment on this.
No, I think you covered it extremely well, Xavier, so thank you very much for that. I think we're also right on the dot out of time now. So I think you have covered everything. It was a lively discussion, a very good session. So back to you, Carl.
Yeah, thank you very much. So you pointed it out. We are out of time now. So it is now left to me to thank the presenters with the starting review and then in the breakout sessions. I thank the rapporteurs, and I can agree to Nicola, it has been a lively chat I have seen, and within the breakouts, so it's a starting point. And with that, I would like to thank Rui and his team and colleagues. As you see, you have hit the point here. You have chosen the right topics for the breakout sessions. There has been a big interest in these topics. So thanks a lot for allowing us this. And it was I was happy to be a part of it, and it's been a great pleasure for me and all the participants. So many thanks to all of you, and wish you a good day in continuation. And now left for the short break before the panel 2 then is continued with Maria from the Spanish agency. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.
Bye.